What is it in the tradition that we need to care to, let's say, gather together and carry forth? And so maybe you can tell us a bit about what it is you're going to talk about at the Symbolical Summit and how it connects to all of this.
True to billing, I'm going to talk about the epic. I want to steer a little bit more into, well, what exactly is the epic? Like, what is this genre that is perennial and independent of what we might call formal components? Is it written in pentameter? Is it, does it have 12 or 24 books? Does it have these sorts of things? And so rather than looking at the formal elements of epic, I want to go under the covers a little bit and, what does the epic represent? And for me, epic represents this peculiar genre by which we derive the sense that existence itself has meaning. Right. That this is the place where the human has to transcend his sort of mortal limitations and reconnect to ultimately to the divine. And so I think that this sensibility about the epic is exactly the genre that we are lacking as a sort of 21st century people, that we are a people that has been divorced not only from our epics, whether that be scripture or Homer or what have you, but rather we have been disassociated from the sensibilities of the epic itself. Right. And so, Jonathan, you talk a lot about, sort of postmodern irony or modernist irony. And, the epic is sort of the anti-irony effort that reconnects us. Moses is a perfect example of an epic hero. He functions as a kind of hero, a suffering servant who is called by, in this case, God. I am, right? But you can see the same thing that Virgil is called by the gods for this epic calling, and so every epic hero has their temptations to sort of settle, but there's something about settling that is anti-human. And so I think that in some way, our modern world is sort of one that preaches a kind of settling, that we can't really know the gods, that there's no such thing as calling, that God or the gods really don't care all that much about us, right? And so if you look at Homer or Aeneas, that there's this suffering quality to the hero that it's not free. Right. When you're called by the gods, it is an invitation into suffering. And, as a Christian, it's very easy for us to see this, right? That to suffer is to be heroic, and to suffer is to heed the call of God.
I think that's amazing, because in some ways this is the place where we are. I think every one of us is looking to move out of postmodern irony, and to understand its function, but then to not live in that irony, because to live with that detachment and that irony is literally what makes us alienated.
That's
And
right.
so how can we kind of, because I'm a modern guy,
Same. Yeah.
I have this reaction when someone tries to get me. I feel like I'm being sold something. I feel like I'm being, I'm being kind of tricked into following something. But I also have that deep intuition that you're mentioning, which is, when Christ was crucified, there's nothing ironic
Right.
in his experience of it. There was some irony in the crucifixion, because everything is in it.
Right.
There's like he was truly there and truly participating and truly giving himself to that moment. And that's really what we need in order to move forward. I totally agree.
Right. When we can again look at the crucifixion, not to just the two of us, but when we can, for instance, look at the crucifixion and not feel cringe, we will know that we are finding our way back to an epic sensibility.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
without the epic, we don't mean. Full stop. We don't mean without the
That's
epic,
right, yeah.
and so I think that there've been lots of forces that have sort of created this irony, but what I see in your project is how to be not ironic anymore,
That's right.
like post ironic,
That's right.
you know.
That's totally right. That's a good way. That's I
Yeah,
rarely heard what I'm saying, what I do so eloquently phrased,
uh,
which is Jonathan just wants us to stop being ironic, or at least to not
right.
make that our
And
main
remember,
posture.
and there are so many different idioms of irony that you can play in, right?
Mm.
So there's the academic form of irony,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is sort of keep everything at a distance. And
Yeah.
well, this was written by the J redactor, and there's this, and who was Homer really
Yeah,
anyway?
yeah,
And
right.
what Virgil was really doing was this: he was kissing ass, or Shakespeare was trying to curry favor with the current sovereign.
Mm.
All that kind of stuff are just these ironic
Yeah.
distancings from the thing itself, right? And if you recall, I mean, this is something, again, I'm going to bring up Lewis again, but uh, 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 Uncle Screwtape tells Wormwood, that we no longer need to worry about people reading old books, and he says because we have thoroughly conditioned, the priests of academia, the professoriate, into what he calls the historical method, right? And the historical method, and it is such a blistering undressing of what the academic process is. And it's like, well, we'll do a review of the literature. What is the what is the current state of the literature? Like, well, what are the the redactions? All these kinds of things, all of them meant, of course, to disenable a genuine reaction to the book. So, to go back, you asked me at the beginning of this conversation, like, what do I do with my students? Well, my first thing, clear away as much of this kind of modern baggage as possible. I don't care about your feelings. Let's, what does Dante really think first? And then admit that in this process, Dante might be a little smarter than you. Like, it's possible, right? Because he's sure as heck a heck of a lot smarter than me, right? Okay, so then why would he say that about the suicides? Why
Mm.
would he say that about the homosexuals? And to
Mm.
really get them to enter into that question. Again, what I'm trying to do is collapse those distances
Mm.
that are so easy. And I tell you, the number one thing I see teachers do that drives me up the wall, which is to give the students the one thing they don't need from you, and that is your own cynicism,
Mm.
right?
Wow.
That when it's like they don't need it, they
Yeah.
have it in spades. And theirs is probably more grounded and founded than yours,
Mm.
Mr. Teacher. Um, but give them the thing itself, right? To give them that, because I think irony, and the way that we're talking about irony here, I'm not talking about the irony of like a Donne poem or anything like that, but the kind of irony that we're talking, this sort of distancing mechanism, is poison.